All right, we're back at this Indy Lite. It's raining outside. That's what our season's boiled down to, boys. It's rain. And it hasn't been good. But what can you do, right? We're going to work on this, try to get rid of that bog. And essentially, I think what I'm going to do is pull the whole motor out. We're going to just go over everything on this sled, just do a more or less a kind of a rebuild on it. I think what the bog is the crank seals. So I can't work in the reverse. I can't rebuild the top end and then try it out and then go back into the crank and do all that. So we're just gonna pull the motor out, or pop the clutch off, pull the motor out, get everything in, just rip it apart and do everything on that. And then I've got a rebuild kit for the clutches and for the fuel system, and we're gonna go over a whole bunch of stuff there. So by the time this is all done, we'll sort of have covered everything on this snowmobile that could cause that bog that we're talking about. There are a lot of things, you know. I'm just looking at this here right now. I didn't really notice, but look at this. Look how much movement is in this motor. I mean, that causes a bog. When you hammer on it, this whole motor is moving and it's affecting the way that the clutches are aligned. So, I mean, there's a lot of problems with that. Look at that. That's no good. How could that be good? There's nothing good about that. So we're going to try to fix all that. Because my kids want to rip on this sled. And even though the weather is really bad out there for doing what we usually do, playing in the powder, it is good for fanners. You can go out and play on the fanners. I'm going to pop these carbs off. Go through those a little later. Get out of there, you. Get out of there, you. Bam. Okay. Now, I'll take that clutch off. This clutch requires a two-part puller. And as you can see, you want to make sure there's a little bit of grease in there. A little bit of grease on the thread so she all turns nicely. I'm thinking it's going to be where it's supposed to be. Well, that was easy. A lot easier than I figured it would be. Usually they're really hard to get off. That wasn't too bad at all. So when I got this sled, I knew what I was getting into. I bought it from a young guy, and not that buying sleds from young guys is a bad thing, but it generally is, because they sort of butcher stuff. I have no idea what's going on here. As long as I can unplug this without having to cut wires. I hate, there's one. The black wire. He's got the black wire. Oh, no, there is a plug there. Hee hee. I think that is my, yes it is. Done. Okay, that's good. That's a bit of a bonus. Oh, look at that pull cord. Of course, that's going to be toast. No problem. It has electric start and it actually works. So, I'll probably rebuild this anyway. They're actually, you know, when you're dealing with these little fanner motors, they're pretty small. It'd be pretty funny to get it apart. I just hope the crank is good. And we could have tested that crank seal. Never really even thought of doing it. But we could have fired up the sled, blasted some carb cleaner down in beside there by that crank and see if it changed, the RPM changed. If it increased, that would mean definitely, yeah, there's a leak. It's taken in some air. You can do that on the mag side as well. I really love these sleds. I had one when I was younger and I used to rip it like crazy before the really big powered sleds came out. And it was a fanner, so it ran in all kinds of weather, man. Early season riding, late season riding, not like those liquid sleds. They just don't like poking around on hot days. God darn it, that's a loose thing. That whole bolt is loose in there. Let's see what's going on. I think she's been abused, boys. Who would do that to a snowmobile?
Underside clip.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Is it tied together?
Well, they have a tendency to come apart. There we go. Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. So it's the old put the bolt in and fix it with wood screws fix. I love it. It's awesome. Keep all these things handy. So what are we going to find in here? How bad is this motor going to be?
I don't think it'll be too bad.
You don't think it'll be bad? You don't think it's going to need new crank? No new crank bearings?
No.
Okay.
Maybe bearings, not new crank.
No. Well, let's hope that it doesn't need new bearings. That would be bad, because I don't want to get into that. I don't want to. There we go. You can go under there. Now, so as you can see, it's not just one thing generally on these old sleds that makes it not run right. It's a whole bunch of factors. And generally speaking, when you buy a snowmobile off a young guy and it's got handlebar risers on it and a Pro Taper chin busting pad, guaranteed, this sled has been abused. That's just the way it is. You can't blame them.
Sometimes if you buy them off an old guy like Louis, they've been abused too.
Oh yeah, but I don't hide it. I never hide it. Anybody who buys anything off me, how am I going to hide that? Oh no, I've never driven it hard. There's no way I could hide that. Get off there, you. You might get lucky. I know. Never use an impact gun on your crank. Yeah, okay. You should never use, I get that comment all the time, never use a gun on your crank, it's going to wreck the bearings. And it's not like I do it often, okay? I'm not doing this every day. And it kind of does work. So, you know what? I didn't have a problem with it. Let me see. So we got our handy steering wheel puller. Hopefully, this little beast will work. One of those. Now I need the socket for that. Piece of cake. We got her. Took some gentle persuading. I was going to put the clutch on to hold it, but sometimes for these older motors when everything's really hammered together, if you just try to turn that, put the pressure on, hammer it, it'll work. But sometimes it just doesn't work as well. So I did what I thought was necessary at the time, and I'm going to live with that. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. So there's no setting of any timing on this. I'm going to have to undo the top one anyway. If I just undo the top one, I should be all right. So I should be able to just leave this dangle. It'll do the dangle. Sound right?
Yeah.
I think it sounds about right. Never had one of these apart, so we're gonna get a chance to see what it looks like. You shouldn't have used an impact gun on that. I can just see. You never use an impact gun on a crank. Oh my God. You guys should see what everybody does when you're not looking at your snowmobile, man, and you should bring it to a shop. You should just think about it. Think about it.
Flip it over? Right. No, like on the bottom side on the outside? No, it's just dirt and grit.
Just goop. Now you can, as you can see, there are 2 sets of exhaust gaskets that sort of sandwich that fan shroud together. Gonna make sure you take that one off. We should have a whole set in there. The window rosa. Let's take this off. Where's that oil pump? Yeah, it's driven off of the crank. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave that there for now. Get off there.
Nice soft lines.
Get off there. So you're off, you're off. So we do want to remember where these go. This is the PTO side. So the PTO side.
Just put it in the engine bay on the PTO side.
Oh, it's right there on the PTO side. Look at the little tiny pistons. They're so tiny. PTO. That is so funny. Pop these cylinders off.
Maybe tiny little connecting rods too.
Just a wee thing.
A little bit of scoring.
Some weird markings of some sort. It's all good. Someone, gaskets are kind of euchred. PTO side. What's this one? It's okay too. So there's a first time for everything. This is the kind of clip that they use to hold that in. It's like a snake. That's it right there. Never seen that kind before. Now everybody out there in YouTube land probably has, but that's new to me. Look at that. It's crazy. Yet cool at the same time. These pistons aren't really that bad.
No, they're actually.
But we're in here, so we're going to change everything, right? The heat just expands the piston material and then usually allows this to come out. Like that. Now I'm going to keep that bearing and these pistons and have them as spares. Always kind of handy. There it is. It's a very loose material, it's like a spring steel. Well, I guess they all are, but
It's a paper thin.
paper thin. There we go. Just a little wackadoo. Nothing too crazy. See that? Bang. You shouldn't hit it with the thing. That's the top. Okay.
There's some pitting on the cranks, eh? That's heavy pitting, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, just some crud maybe got stuck in there. And they're kind of.
Oh, that's done.
That was no good. Doggone it. Guys, contact info still?
I just Googled it every time.
You know what? For honestly, sometimes this is what happens, right? That's what happens when you get into cranks and stuff, because it's the heart of the beast. And it's one thing to change a top end, not a big deal. When you get into the crank, generally speaking, you can usually have all the bearings swapped out for $400, right?
$400 to $500.
$400 to $500. I bought a brand new crank for my Enticer 2. It's got the 410 in it. And that crank was $325, brand spanking new on eBay.
Really?
It was new old stock. So before I actually go and figure out and bring this to somebody to, repair it, because it's obviously it's euchred, just to show everybody that again. Like all these, obviously that bearing is done. It's not doing its trick. That's the mag side bearing. Even these ones here, oops. Some noise in there. So we could probably get away with, swapping, like pulling these bearings off and there's some pitting on this one too. But when the guy's got to bust this crank apart. So I'm going to go and I'm going to look, see if I can find a good used one locally, maybe. Because don't forget, it's not like we're going to take this thing on the trails and do a whole bunch of trail riding with it. It's probably going to get about 500 kilometers a year on the back trails of my property.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
You think more than that?
No.
You think less than that? Well, it'll be the boy.
I think it'd be about 500 kilometers in 5 years.
Yeah, well, the boys will be running it. So, when I had one of these, I put a lot of Ks on them. I did eventually. When the boys get older, they can take it and rip. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and I'm going to see if I can find another crank or another option to see. That's the best way to do that. And you know what? I can't plan for that. I just can't. But I do have everything ready to go as soon as we do find something. I do know a guy locally who's got a bunch of these motors. Whether or not he has them torn apart and knows really what's going on, I have no idea. But I'm going to phone him and find out. Yep. Stay tuned. More coming.